you've mentioned this formula that self-respect equals self-image. That sounds like where we've just arrived. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Self-respect equals self-image.
Well, I say that if you're not willing to forgive yourself, that's a declaration of no love. You're saying if you don't want to forgive yourself, if you don't want to let go of the garbage that you're using to poison your existence, then you're saying, declaring to the world, you're publishing to the world that you don't feel worthy of love. So you're going to use that subconsciously, obviously, but you're going to use that to hold yourself in contempt. Forgiveness is the foundation of responsibility, the ability to respond. Because if you don't forgive yourself, you're not living in the present. You're avoiding the present. So responsibility then becomes the cornerstone of self-respect. Where if we don't want to be responsible for how we allocate the energy, and that's what responsibility means, how you allocate the energy within this moment, then you can't respect yourself because you don't want to be responsible. You don't want to be an adult. And being responsible means being an adult so that you can bear whole fruit, so that you can create something anew. So you're not creating from the past refuge that we carry with ourselves. Self-respect is immediate. When I say to myself, I love you, I forgive you, then immediately I have self-respect because I'm loyal to myself. That self-respect translates into how I carry myself and what I radiate, what my self-image is about, which, by the way, is what I'm publishing moment by moment. That's what I'm marketing into the field. That's what I'm selling. That's what I'm giving off. If I'm glowing, there's a different radiance and a totally different story being told than if I'm passive and I'm suppressed. Who's doing the glowing? Who's doing the suppressing? I am.
You know, I think there's another factor as I'm listening to you that pops into my mind, and that is in this process of self-forgiveness, in this process of really embracing self-responsibility, one of the bumps in the road often seems to be outside opinions of others, or what I'm going to imagine is the opinions of others. I can pick up a magazine, I could look at a hot guy and think, oh my God, people don't love me because I don't look like him or her.
Right.
So how do you manage this conversation about how we are sort of subject oftentimes to others' opinions?
Well, it's a dialogue, and obviously to begin with, it's easy for me as a professional to see if people are using most of their energy to suppress themselves or whether they're using their energy to expand or prosper. So the point here is that how you feel towards yourself is your responsibility. And whatever somebody says to me or shows me or does, I'm still responsible for what I do with that. If I have low self-esteem, then I have low energy. I have devoted a lot of energy to sustaining an image of low self-esteem. So I'm the person that actually is in control of how I feel about myself. Now, in order to feel bad about myself, don't I have to feel badly or behave badly? If I want to feel good about myself, don't I want to feel good, in essence? So there's cause and effect everywhere we turn. If I'm not willing to be responsible for my life, if I'm willing to sort of excuse myself from being the governor of my ship or my corporation, which is my life, then how can I have self-respect? So the images we're talking about, everybody talks about, and we live in a society where everybody else is to blame. I don't know anyone to blame. I don't think there is anybody to blame unless you want to excuse yourself from the equation. Your power to allocate your energy to love or to despair or to self-hate or self-loathing is always the same. Mm-hmm. And if you don't want to love yourself, you're still going to be responsible for that. People have told me they don't know how to love themselves. And I say that's not true. Love is light. Love is awareness. All you have to do is decide to forgive yourself to begin with and stop kicking yourself when you're down. Help yourself on your feet. Why don't you just, to begin with, sit down with yourself and draw a deep breath. Come into the moment and decide that you want to be with yourself. You want to be your friend. You want to nourish, you want to love, you want to take care of yourself. Well, what do you mean? Well, it's up to you. Why are we looking for somebody else to take care of the dirty work? We don't love ourselves, but we're looking for other people to love ourselves? What does that translate to? How is anybody going to love you if you don't love yourself? And the point that I'm making is that we can take this dialogue in circles. We can blame the food. We can blame the corporations. We can blame everything. But when you change your perspective and assume responsibility for your moment, for your breath, then everything changes. Perspective, a change of perspective is what I call the miracle. The miracle is you. You're the creator. How you decide to experience this next moment is the opportunity available to you moment by moment for the rest of your life. And you can look at life as a pain or as a pleasure. But how you look at life is what you're going to find. What you see is what you get.
You know, I know that so much of your insight, wisdom, skill set comes from working with people, from working one-on-one, from being, in a very intimate way, working with people and their health and their nutrition and their movement and their exercise. So I'm just wondering if some examples come to mind, thoughts come to mind of what it looks like, what it could look like when you're working with somebody who starts out, have checked out of their body. I don't want to be here. I'm distracting. It's their fault. I'm in victim consciousness. I've kind of lost responsibility of this. And there's a turnaround and there's a shift in how they're seeing the world. What do you see?
I understand your question, and it's a good one. Because we're talking about food, just to give you an example, most of your life, my life is equivalent to a corporation or to a company, small company, large company, and it's a process. What I do in life is I'm an energy manager. So being a life coach means that I help people maximize the results of their energy. And as I said before, all that you devote your awareness to is what's going to grow and expand, whether it's something you want or don't want. So when you think about what you don't want, you're actually wanting it. So here's what happens. Somebody will come to me in a group or in a class or as an individual, and I say to them, "What's your challenge?" And usually they'll say to me, "Well, I've had enough. I can't do this anymore." And I said, "Well, why don't we start with that? You can do this for longer, but you're not willing to. If you're willing to say that to me, that you're not willing to, you've taken some power. If you say you can't do it, you're saying you're powerless." So I start pointing out to people how they use language and how they reveal themselves and publish their reality in language all the time, body language, the language of words, and so forth. But I also point out to them that if they're fed up, then it's very, very, well, it's almost 100% sure that their energy levels have been drained by their behavior. Now, I said earlier, you can't waste energy. You can just devote it. But if you devote all your energy to self-pity, feeling sorry for yourself, not wanting to be yourself, then you're going to become very, very tired and obtain chronic fatigue syndrome or any kind of immunity disorders, because what you've done is you've run your battery so low that you can't sustain your own light. And each and every one of us is literally dramatically dispensing so much energy, feeling sorry for ourselves, not wanting to be who we are, that we're running out of energy. And that's when we're going to expire, right? So the first thing I do with these people, I point out to them that the only thing they have to do to begin with is become responsible, realize where they brought themselves, and if they're willing to do that, immediately we can start a journey on reallocating the energy that they have at their fingertips towards themselves instead of away from themselves. And then there are procedures. Like you mentioned, my book, Presence is Power, is the philosophy. The Prosperity Action Guide is a 7-week program where people just enter the program on their own accord or in a group, and they start a process starting with awareness, becoming responsible, defining their purpose, and then committing to themselves. Now, forgiveness is almost like getting engaged to yourself. Now, commitment is getting married to yourself, promising that you're never going to abandon yourself again. You're going to sustain your life force, and you're going to commit completely to your life. And then step number 5 is about advancement, how you move into the dialogue of a new language, because you're going to tell a new story. You're going to tell a story about greatness instead of lack. And so then there's step number 7 called insight, where you actually become a witness to your process. And if you do fall down, you don't kick yourself lying. You don't kick yourself when you're down. You help yourself onto your feet. And by doing that, you prove your loyalty and your love to yourself. And then step number 7 is about gratitude. Now, you know as well as I do, Mark, that if we would turn our attention to counting our blessings instead of counting our curses, our lives would dramatically change overnight. Mm-hmm. So what I do is that becomes the framework, the psychological, emotional framework, and also a nourishing plan, where I point out to people that if they're eating foods that don't contain any life source or energy, then it's going to be very difficult to sustain any kind of energy to change a life. It just doesn't work. I mean, I say to them, do you ever go to the store, the supermarket, and ask for batteries that have been run down, empty batteries? No? They tell me they've never done that. And then I ask them, so why do you go to the store and buy a food that has absolutely no life force? Why would you buy foods that have no nourishment, none whatsoever? Foods that have been completely decimated and have nothing in it except colorings and fillers and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Highly processed foods that absolutely have no nourishing value at all. And so people start realizing what this is all about. By the time they enter or come into dialogue with me, they've usually run themselves down, and within a number of minutes, their energy is back online, and they start realizing the potential of directing their awareness to what they actually want and love versus what they don't love and what they hate. So that's the simplicity of it. Now then we have Glow Motion, which is a completely physically transforming system based on the core, where we unify mind, body, and emotion. We do breath work. We do all kinds of realignment processes within the body to maximize the body's ability to process and metabolize energy. The whole system of Glow Motion is about love. It's about expansion. It's about maximizing your life force in the physical body that you have. And so we have a lot of mechanisms, but what really is required is the individual ready, willing, and able to be responsible for their energy and how it's allocated. And the moment they say yes, they transform. Then there's a frame, because if we don't sustain the dialogue, it's not going to grow into a pattern that then becomes a ritual.
I want to pick up on that last sentence that you said. It's sustaining a pattern that becomes a ritual. You know, part of what I hear in there is the word practice, and I use that in the very positive sense, because so often I will hear people say, I might make a suggestion to someone around their food, around their relationship with food, and they'll say, oh, I tried that already. And I'm like, okay, well, how long did you try for? Well, I tried it for a couple of days. It didn't work. I wasn't able to relax when I eat. I wasn't able to forgive myself, so forget it. But I tried. And I think, well, I'm not so sure. There needs to be some... I think it's almost as if we're learning, we as human beings are learning how to sustain ourselves. It's daily, baby steps, practice, and almost have enough authority or maturity to realize that just because I pick up the banjo doesn't mean I'm going to learn it in one sitting.
Right. No, true. But then again, we get into the process of in my system, I often talk about the motivational coaches around the world. They tell you can do it, right? Mm-hmm. You know, we can walk on coals, we can eat glass, we can stand on our heads, we can do everything. We can, but we don't. Why? Because we don't allow ourselves. So your prosperity allowance actually means how much permission you have to sustain prosperity, how much you like yourself. We shame and blame and guilt ourselves, and that's how we hold ourselves down. The practice that I create, the framework that I create with people, is for them to become self-reliant and become loyal so that they can become trustworthy. Now, permission for love is about trustworthiness. Worthiness obviously meaning how much love can you receive. So that's something that has to be expanded like a bank account. You have to practice, you have to say what you do, and you have to create these processes where you actually become self-reliant and self-trusting. When you trust yourself, you're fortifying and strengthening your resolve to live in love and live in the light. And there's absolutely no way to sustain a lifestyle with motivation, because motivation is always fear-based, and the most powerful motivation is away from and towards. Inspiration, on the other hand, is a moment, now-based process. And when I'm inspired and breathed into, I'm infused, my vision is clear and what I see is clear. The energy backing my vision is powerful, and I can create from there. The point that I'm making is I'm never going to allow myself to experience or see anything I don't feel worthy of. And if I don't keep my word, my discipline, my practice, I am never going to feel worthy, whatever I say.
You used a term that I find very compelling. I'm wondering if you could elaborate on it a bit more. You used the term prosperity allowance, and yes. I have a good feeling that when you say prosperity, it means a lot. It means more than just necessarily money, even though it can include that. So can you fill in some of the blanks when you say prosperity allowance?
Well, to prosper means to bloom, to glow, to flower. I mean, it means to be abundant on all levels. It doesn't mean that you have piles of money hanging around. It means there's a great deal of balance and harmony in your life. That's what prosperity is. To prosper means to thrive. And money is a resource. Energy is beautiful. Money is beautiful. Greed isn't good, right? But money as a resource is like food or like electricity or like any kind of energy that can be allocated for a lot of different reasons. And money is not the root of all evil. It can't be. Money is just an absolutely unattached energy and can be allocated to such great things. And if you don't have money, then that's a lack. That's something that needs to be filled. When I talk about prosperity, I'm talking about a harmonic state of peace and balance. And if people around me aren't prospering, I can't sustain my own. So it's a communal process also at the same time. Now, when I talked to you earlier, I talked to you about the 7 steps. Now, gratitude being the 7th step, right? So gratitude is bliss, but when you become generous, generosity is an expression of gratitude. And when you're generous, you realize that there's always enough. There's never any lack, and it's always going to come back to you the way you give it. Giving means receiving. And prosperity allowance means your ability, your capacity to receive love, and it's going to be equal to your capacity to give it. Mm-hmm. Now, I said earlier, motivation is great. If people want to be motivated, that's great. I want to be inspired. My life has been very interesting, and I've had bouts in my life where I've had a great deal of affluence, not necessarily prosperity. And at some point in my life, what I've done is I've rejected what I've attracted because I didn't feel comfortable with it. My prosperity allowance didn't allow me to have that much love in my life. So I stopped it. And I didn't do it consciously, but my experience with people, with corporations, with life, has shown me that nobody exceeds their prosperity allowance. The way you feel about yourself, your self-image, your self-respect is the determining factor of how much love you're willing to receive. When your comfort level is reached, you're going to shut down. So motivation for me is just for kids. Inspiration is for grown-ups. Mm-hmm. Opening your heart, making yourself accessible to the world, to the love that the world is providing all the time, everywhere. And if I'm self-reliant, self-trusting, I'm trustworthy, I'm worthy of love, and I can receive on that level.
You use the word generous, and saying, you're talking about prosperity allowance, how yes, there's how much can I allow in, but it's also the same as how much am I giving? How generous am I being? When you said generous, I heard the word generator. I heard the word generative, because when I'm generous, we're actually generating energy.
Absolutely.
We're generating commerce. We're generating exchange, as opposed to I've just lost all this stuff that I gave to you.
The receiving is in the giving, and we're energy transformers. So the more energy is actually being generated through me, the more glow I have. It's like it's a radiant process. So more energy is being transformed, and the better I feel, the more alive I am. So there's nothing that gives me as much as giving.
It reminds me that so many people I've seen or worked with who've had a challenging relationship with food and body, oftentimes the turning point happens when they just start to be more generative or generous or giving.
Yes.
And we don't always think that. We think, well, how could I do that? Because, gosh, I've got no energy. I've got nothing. Woe is me. There's nothing in my account. I'm not liking myself. What do you mean, give my gift? What do you mean, give energy? And yet so often that's kind of like the mystery remedy for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Well, love is always the remedy. Always. Love is always the remedy. There is really no other remedy but love. And love is a light, and it can come in an allopathic process or a naturopathic, you know what I'm saying, homeopathic process. But it's just light. It's just vibrations and waves and energy. But let's talk about being regenerative. Let's talk about the process of generation or generating. It's about metabolizing, right? So people think that calories have anything to do with how we metabolize foods, but we both know that's not true. It's the life force and the vibrancy of the food that's the process. But then we get into what's metabolism, and most people, when I ask them what's metabolism, they say, well, if I'm running on the treadmill, I'm sweating. And I ask them jokingly, so you mean that when you're peeing on yourself, you think you're metabolizing? And they say, yes, that's what I feel like. That's when I'm metabolizing. I say, well, metabolizing is a very simple process. It's energy, it's space, it's oxygen. And what's lacking? A spark, the ignition. So talking about interest, when you're interested, when somebody's interested, they become vibrant, and the spark of life enters the process, and there's a combustion that occurs. That's really what life is all about. And it's about being inspired and infused and passionate about something. That's where the fire is. So, what's happening in general with all of us is that we're lacking inspiration. We become passive and suppressed. And you talked about people having challenges with food. I've never met anyone that has challenges with food. I've met a lot of people that are challenged by themselves and use food to sidetrack the issue, or alcohol or drugs or somebody else to blame. Or in essence, the only challenge we have is we don't want ourselves the way we are. But that becomes the most beautiful, powerful opportunity at the same time. Because the moment I want myself, a whole new life begins.
It seems like the process of good nutrition, of a good sense of healthy embodiment. I'm in my body. I feel good in here. In so many ways, it's these aren't your words, but it's sounding more like a journey, like a spiritual journey, like a bigger, more epic journey than just about here's the right food and here's the right exercise. It's really creating a much wider circle around this conversation of what nutrition really is.
It is. A friend of mine many, many years ago said to me, Gudni, when you meet somebody, treat that person as if it's the most important person that you're ever going to meet. It's going to be the most important person in your life, right? It makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. I actually realized at that point that that person was me. So this is the most significant relationship that I'm ever going to have on this planet. And if I treat myself with respect, that's going to translate to other relationships that I have. And relating is what life is all about. belonging to a larger community of energy in essence. So the only way that we're going to be able to sustain that kind of a relationship is with respect, with rituals, with processes, where every day is an opportunity to love more, or it's an opportunity to reject and abandon. Every moment that we have is life is asking you, are you with you or are you against you? Do you love you or are you rejecting yourself? So the way I approach this is that each and every person I've met is such a beautiful entity, and how they're conducting their lives is not wrong or right. It's just an opportunity to be educated about the most beautiful potential relationship that they stand to or stand to sort of encounter. The moment they look into the mirror, they look into their eyes and say, I love you. I'm going to be here for you for the rest of my life. Whatever's going on, whatever you feel, whatever's happening, I'm going to be there for you. I'm going to be there. I'm committed. The moment that happens, Mark, there's a transformation that just is explosive. And from there on, the way you treat yourself is going to be completely different. But in order to do this, we have to obviously awaken. And the key word is responsibility. There will be no responsibility without forgiveness. If we're not willing to forgive ourselves, we're saying, the statement is, what we're what we're let's say just publishing into the field of exponential. My language is a little off. We're publishing an image based on that. We're saying to the universe, we don't love ourselves. We don't want to be loved. We don't want to be loved because we don't love ourselves. We'd like to be victims. So if you can feel pity for me, that's okay. I can deal with that. But we're basically saying to the universe, I'm not worthy of love. So the point that I'm making is if we're not willing to forgive ourselves, we may claim we don't know how to, but the point is we're not willing to. The moment we are willing to forgive ourselves, something completely magical transpires, and you become present to the moment of potential, and there a completely new existence is available.
Well, earlier on, I think you referred to that as an awakening, and that we likely only have, let's say, maybe 3 major opportunities in a life to awaken. You know, I know I could look back on my own life and pick out times of, wow, opening. I woke up. I saw myself differently. I saw the world differently. Those are beautiful, powerful moments. It's arguably some of the best food ever.
Yes.
So, my friend, I would love to be in this conversation for days. Every time we speak, my mind is expanded. I come away, my heart is open, and I just come away with so much more to think about. And I just love how you communicate to me timeless wisdom in a manner that can be very easily digested, but very clear and very thoughtful and very beautifully. So I just honor you. I know you've worked so hard in this field, and I know how powerful your work is. I've met very few people who can combine an approach to embodiment, to physicality, to exercise, to life coaching, to nutrition that just brings it all together. So I would just love for you to share with viewers as we finish up, how do we stay in touch with you, your world? What are you up to? What should we know about?
Your generosity and your language, your words warm my heart. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
I just want to inject before I leave. It's like we've spoken so much about responsibility, and responsibility is the ability to respond. The opposite of that is reactive, compulsive, impulsive behavior. So when we're responsible, we're actually creators, conscious creators. When we're not responsible, we're still creators, but we're creating by default, and we're mostly just chaotic. Thank you for that. My websites are growmotion.com and presenceispower.com. I'm very visible on Facebook as Gudni Gunnarsson and Grow Motion and Presence is Power. My primary email, the one that I use the most, is gg@ropeyoga.com. And I'm obviously eager to interact with the world and with people. So if people have questions, if they're interested, please contact me in any way, shape, or form. I think that Go Motion. Obviously, Go Motion has an inquiry site aspect to it, and presence is power also. And they're just. I think I have to say, Go Motion does not have a W. It's glomotion.com, and presence is power is written just the way that it sounds.
Well, I look forward to your work, your message, your gift getting out there more and more. I'm thrilled to share you with this universe and this tribe. I really thank you for your insight and for just so much beautiful work over the years, really to just help people wake up. In a lot of ways, that feels like the name of the game when it comes to good health and good nutrition. There's waking up to do.
Yes, I think we're being selfish. We're creating a community of like-minded spirits. And the one thing that came into my mind, all of the people that are going to be listening to this conversation and the seminar in general have awakened. I can give you that they're totally awakened. Their next step is to become responsible for how they allocate their energy. Mm-hmm. And that's step number 2 in the process. I am so appreciative of your work, Mark. I think you're doing such beautiful things. And it's an honor to be a part of this process. Thank you so much.
Well, lots more to come, my friends. Thank you for being here, Gudni. So I've been with Gudni Gunnarsson, wonderful thought leader, life coach from Iceland. Famous in Iceland. Hopefully that will spread more. And lots more to come with you, my friends. Thank you, everybody. This has been Mark David on behalf of the Future of Nutrition Online Conference, and we will all have more to come. Take care now.